Hope the vacation was worth it.
I was sitting on the couch scrolling through my phone after dinner when Rebecca walked into the living room with an expression I'd come to recognize over the past few months. That cold, detached look that said whatever was coming next wasn't up for debate. She stood there with her arms crossed and announced she was going on a trip the following week. Not asked, not suggested. Announced. Leaving Friday morning, back the next Friday. An entire week at some beach resort with people from her office. I looked up from my phone and asked where exactly. She said some beach resort, that some people from work were organizing it. Some people. I knew exactly what that meant and who she was really talking about. For the past 6 months, one particular name kept appearing in nearly every conversation we had. Trevor. Trevor said something funny at lunch. Trevor thinks we should try that new place downtown. Trevor suggested this approach for a project. Trevor recommended a book. On and on. His name had become a constant presence in our home, and I'd watched her light up every single time she mentioned him. I asked directly if Trevor was going on this trip. She didn't even pause or hesitate. Said, yeah, he actually organized the whole thing. Him and Natalie from accounting, plus a couple other people from the department, a week. She was standing there informing me, not asking that she'd be spending 7 full days at a beach with the guy I'd watched her grow progressively closer to over half a year. The guy whose text messages made her smile at the dinner table. The guy she'd been staying late at the office with at least a dozen times. I said it slowly to make sure I understood correctly. She was telling me right now that she was going on a week-long beach vacation with Trevor, and she was just informing me about this. She actually rolled her eyes at me. Genuinely rolled her eyes like I was being ridiculous. Said it wasn't like that colleagues and adults can take trips together without it being some dramatic situation. I asked when exactly she'd planned all this. She said a few weeks ago. A few weeks. She'd known about this trip for weeks, had been planning it, and decided to tell me the night before she'd start packing. I sat up straighter on the couch and asked if she didn't think to mention it before now, or maybe ask if I was comfortable with the whole arrangement. That's when her expression completely changed. The fake patience she'd been showing disappeared entirely, replaced by something much colder and harder. She said she wasn't asking for permission. She was going, and if I didn't like her choices, then I should get a divorce, just like that. The words came out casually, like she was daring me to react, like she fully expected me to back down and apologize for even questioning her. I looked at her, really looked at her, and something clicked in my mind. This wasn't the woman I'd married 7 years ago, or maybe it was and I'd just been too blind or too willing to overlook things to see it clearly. The disrespect, the coldness, the complete lack of consideration for our marriage or my feelings. It had been building steadily for months, and I'd been making excuses for all of it. I didn't raise my voice or start an argument. I just nodded slowly and said I got it. She blinked, clearly expecting more of a fight or some big emotional scene. Asked if that was really it. No big dramatic reaction. I said, nope, she'd made herself perfectly clear. She stared at me for another long moment, then shrugged and walked toward the bedroom. Said good, she was packing that night since her flight was early. I watched her go. Heard her pulling suitcases out of the closet, actually humming to herself like she didn't have a single care in the world. Like she hadn't just thrown our entire marriage on the table and walked away from it. I picked up my phone again, but I wasn't scrolling anymore. I was thinking and planning. She went to make unilateral decisions about our marriage without my input. Fine, 2 people could play that game. The next morning, I woke up to find her already fully dressed, makeup done perfectly, pulling her suitcase toward the front door. She was wearing a sundress I'd never seen before, probably bought it specifically for this trip. She said she'd text me when she landed, not even looking at me as she checked her phone, probably texting him. I told her to have fun. She glanced up at that, suspicious of my tone, but I kept my face completely neutral. She shrugged, grabbed her keys, and left. I stood at the window and watched her load the suitcase into her car, watched her check her appearance in the side mirror and smile at her reflection, watched her drive away without looking back even once. Then I pulled out my phone and started searching for divorce attorneys in the area. It was barely 7 in the morning, but I wasn't waiting another single minute. She'd given me the solution herself when she told me to get a divorce. I was just going to take her advice. Monday morning, I called the first attorney on my list, a guy named Malcolm Pierce, who had solid reviews and a reputation for not sugarcoating things during our phone consultation. He asked how long we'd been married. I said 7 years. He asked about shared assets. I told him the house was in my name only, bought it 2 years before we got married. She moved in after the wedding, but never contributed a single dollar to the mortgage or property taxes. I heard him typing. He said that simplified things considerably, asked about vehicles. I said 2 cars, both in our individual names. I pay my loan, she pays hers. He asked about joint bank accounts. I said 1 checking account we both put money into for bills and utilities. I had my own savings account she wasn't on at all, more typing. He said this should be very straightforward, asked what the grounds were. I told him she was having an affair or about to have one, hard to say which at this point. But she was currently on a week-long beach trip with the guy. He asked if I could prove an affair. I said I had months of text messages, late nights at work with him, constant mentions of his name, and the fact that she literally told me to get a divorce if I didn't like her choices, then left anyway. He was quiet for a second, asked if she said that word for word. I confirmed she did. He asked when I could come in to sign papers. By Tuesday afternoon, I was sitting in his office, going through documents. He'd moved incredibly fast, which I really appreciated. No wasted time, no false hope about reconciliation attempts, just a clean and efficient process. Pierce slid the papers across his desk and said we'd file these on Thursday. She'd be served when she got back. I told him Friday. He asked if I wanted to be there when she was served or if I'd prefer she receive them another way. I thought about it for a minute. Told him I'd handle it myself. I wanted to see her face when she realized what had happened. He nodded like he'd heard that response before. Said, my house, my name on the deed. I had every right to ask her to leave once she was served. If she refused, I could involve law enforcement to remove her. I said I understood. He leaned back in his chair and said one more thing. She was going to be angry, possibly completely irrational. Don't engage beyond what's absolutely necessary, and don't let her bait me into saying something that could be used against me later. I promised I wouldn't. When I got home that evening, I started on the next phase of the plan. I went through the entire house, methodically and carefully, separating her belongings from mine. Clothes, toiletries, books, decorations she'd purchased, personal items. Everything went into boxes that I labeled clearly and stacked neatly in the guest bedroom. It took me 2 full nights to finish completely. The house looked different after I was done. Cleaner somehow, like removing her presence had cleared out more than just physical clutter. Wednesday night, my buddy Jordan called. We'd known each other since college, and he was one of the few people who'd noticed things weren't right between Rebecca and me lately. He asked how I was holding up. I said I was fine. He pushed back and said, come on, my wife was on a trip with another guy. I couldn't actually be fine. I said I was handling it. He was quiet for a moment and asked what that meant exactly. I told him it meant I was handling it and I'd tell him more when there was more to tell. He said all right, but if I needed anything to let him know. I thanked him. I wasn't ready to tell anyone yet. Not until everything was finalized and done. No point in having conversations about it when nothing was official. Thursday, I worked from home, took calls, answered emails, acted like everything was completely normal. But in the back of my mind, I kept running through how Friday would go. She'd walk in expecting everything to be exactly the same, expecting me to have spent the week missing her, maybe even feeling guilty for questioning her trip. She had absolutely no idea what was waiting for her. That evening, I got a text from her. The first message all week that wasn't just a brief landed safe or weather's nice update. She said she couldn't wait to be home tomorrow and that she missed me. I stared at that message for a solid minute. Missed me. After an entire week of basically ignoring me, after rubbing this trip in my face, after telling me to divorce her if I didn't like it, now she suddenly missed me. I didn't respond to that message. Friday morning, I woke up early, made coffee, took a long shower, got dressed. The divorce papers were sitting in a manila envelope on the kitchen table. Her boxes were stacked in the guest room with the door open so she'd see them immediately when she walked past. I'd already called a locksmith and scheduled him for later that afternoon. The moment she was out of the house, those locks were getting changed. Her flight was supposed to land at 2. She'd texted me the details earlier in the week, probably expecting me to offer to pick her up from the airport. I hadn't responded to that message either. I sat in the living room working on my laptop, half paying attention to emails, mostly just watching the clock tick forward. At 3:15, I heard her car pull into the driveway. This was it. The moment everything changed. I closed my laptop and stood up, moving to the kitchen where I had a clear view of the front door. My heart was pounding, but my hands were steady. I heard the key turn in the lock. The door swung open and there she was, tanned and smiling, pulling her suitcase behind her like she was returning from the best vacation of her entire life. She had no idea that vacation had just cost her everything. While I waited for her to fully enter, my mind drifted back to when things had started changing between us. 6 months ago, almost to the day. It started small and subtle. She came home from work one Tuesday and mentioned a new hire in her department, Trevor Harrison. Said he seemed competent, had good ideas, nothing unusual about that at first. People talk about their coworkers all the time. But then his name kept coming up every few days, another Trevor story. Trevor suggested a new workflow system that was more efficient. Trevor made everyone laugh during a morning meeting. Trevor knew this great lunch spot downtown that had amazing sandwiches. I didn't think much of it initially, just normal work conversation. Then she started dressing differently for work. Not dramatically, but I noticed the change. Better outfits, more makeup than usual, hair done with more care and attention. One morning I told her she looked nice. She barely glanced at me and said she was just trying to look professional. Professional, right. The late nights at the office started in month 2. She'd text me around 5, saying she had to stay late to finish something. Then it became 6. Then 7. By month 3, she was staying late twice a week, not getting home until after 8 at night. I asked one night when she finally walked in at 8:30 if it was a big project. She said yeah, she and Trevor were working on the quarterly reports together and it took forever. Always Trevor and I. Never the team, never other coworkers or the department. Just Trevor. I tried talking to her about it once. Asked carefully if everything was okay between us. She looked at me like I was being completely ridiculous. Said everything was fine and why would I even ask that? I said she'd been distant lately. She said she'd been busy and there was a difference. But it wasn't just busy. Busy people still make time for their spouse. Still have conversations that go deeper than logistics about bills and groceries. Still look at you like they're genuinely happy to see you. She'd stopped looking at me like that months ago. Month 4. I started noticing the texts. She'd be sitting next to me on the couch, and her phone would buzz constantly. She'd smile at the screen, type back quickly, smile again. When I asked who she was texting, she'd say, "Just work stuff," and turn the screen away from me. One night, her phone was sitting on the counter while she was in the shower. It lit up with a message. I didn't pick it up or read it, but I clearly saw the name Trevor at 10:30 at night. Work stuff. Sure. Month 5, we stopped having any physical connection at all. She'd come to bed late after I was already asleep, wake up early, and be gone before I got up. On weekends, she'd find reasons to be busy. Errands, meeting up with friends she suddenly had. Her social life became very active and didn't include me at all. The few times I suggested we do something together, she'd sigh like I was being difficult. Said she'd been busy all week and just wanted to relax. But relaxing apparently meant being on her phone texting someone who made her smile more than I had in months. 3 weeks ago, I asked her directly. We were in the kitchen, and she was making coffee before heading out for another girls' brunch that somehow lasted 6 hours. I asked if she was happy. She looked up, genuinely surprised by the question. Asked what I meant. I said in this marriage, was she happy? She stirred her coffee and wouldn't meet my eyes. Said she didn't know why I was being so dramatic lately. I told her I wasn't being dramatic and just asking a simple, straightforward question. She said things were fine and I was overthinking everything. But she never actually answered the question. 2 weeks ago, she stayed out until midnight, said it was a work dinner that ran late. She came home smelling like wine and expensive cologne. Not her perfume. Someone else's. I didn't say anything, just watched her stumble to the bedroom, humming to herself. And then last Thursday came the announcement about the trip. The casual way she threw it in my face. The complete lack of respect or consideration. And when I questioned it, when I dared to suggest it was inappropriate, she told me to divorce her. Like she wanted me to. Like she was daring me to finally do something about the situation we both knew existed, but neither of us had named out loud. So I did. Standing in my kitchen, waiting for her to walk through that door, I felt nothing but absolute clarity. This wasn't a mistake or an overreaction. This was 6 months of watching someone slowly and deliberately check out of our marriage while expecting me to just accept it without question. She'd made her choice when she booked that trip, when she packed her bags, when she walked out that door without looking back. Now she was about to live with the consequences. She dropped her suitcase by the door and headed straight for the kitchen, barely acknowledging me standing there. Said she was starving, that the airplane food was absolutely terrible. I watched her open the fridge and root around, pulling out leftovers, completely at ease and comfortable, like the past week had been perfectly normal. like she hadn't just spent 7 days with another man. She finally glanced at me, said I was quiet, asked what, no welcome home. I almost laughed out loud. Told her welcome home. Asked how her trip was, keeping my voice level and calm. She actually smiled, said it was amazing. The resort was absolutely gorgeous. Weather was perfect every day. They had such a good time. They, not I, they. I said I was glad she enjoyed herself. She grabbed a fork and started eating the leftovers cold, leaning against the counter. She looked so comfortable, so confident, so completely certain that everything was exactly as she'd left it. She said between bites that she'd been thinking about what she said before she left, about the divorce. Said it so casually, like we were discussing what to watch on television. She said she meant it. If I couldn't handle her having her own life, having friends, taking trips, then maybe we really should reconsider this whole thing. There it was, the ultimatum dressed up as concern, the manipulation disguised as independence. I nodded slowly and said she was absolutely right. She blinked, clearly not expecting that response, asked what I meant. I said she was right, we should reconsider this whole thing. She laughed, but it sounded uncertain. Asked, okay, so what does that mean exactly? I gestured toward the kitchen table behind her and told her to take a look at what was sitting there. She turned confused and saw the manila envelope. Her expression shifted immediately from confusion to something that looked almost like fear. She picked up the envelope slowly, like it might bite her, opened it carefully, pulled out the papers. I watched her face change completely as she read, watched the color drain from her tan, watched her hands start trembling. She asked in barely a whisper what this was. I said divorce papers, exactly like she suggested. She looked up at me, and for the first time in 6 months, I had her complete and total attention. She said I was joking, that this was completely insane. I couldn't just do this. I told her I wasn't joking and I already did it. The papers were filed. She stared at them like they were written in a foreign language she couldn't understand, like she couldn't process what she was actually seeing. I realized that despite everything, despite the disrespect and the affair and the complete destruction of our marriage, she never actually thought I'd follow through. She thought I'd just accept it all forever. She was wrong. She read through the papers again, slower this time. Her hands were still shaking noticeably. When she looked up at me, her face had gone from tanned and confident to pale and uncertain. She said these were already filed, that I'd done this while she was gone. I confirmed yes, on Tuesday. She'd been gone for 4 days when I filed. She stopped, and her jaw clenched. Said I didn't even try to talk to her, didn't call or text. I reminded her that she told me to get a divorce if I didn't like her choices. I didn't like her choices. So here we were. She slammed the papers down on the table, hard. Said she didn't think I'd actually do it. People say things when they're angry. I told her she wasn't angry when she said it. She was completely calm and matter of fact. She meant every single word. She opened her mouth, closed it, tried again, said this was crazy. I was throwing away 7 years over one trip. I said I wasn't throwing away anything. She did that when she went on vacation with another man and told me to deal with it or leave. She insisted Trevor was just a friend, a colleague, nothing happened. I just looked at her, didn't argue or debate. The lie was so obvious it didn't deserve a response. She must have seen something in my expression because her tone shifted and got defensive. Said I was being paranoid and this was exactly why she needed space. I'd been suffocating her for months. I asked if I was suffocating her by asking where she was at 9 on a work night, by suggesting we spend time together on weekends. Yeah, I was terrible. She stopped herself and ran her hands through her hair. Said, look, we can talk about this. We can work through it. But divorce, come on, that's extreme. I said, no. What's extreme is telling your husband to divorce you and then being shocked when he does exactly that. She stared at me like she was seeing me for the very first time. Maybe she was. She asked where her things were, suddenly looking around. Where was her stuff from the bathroom? I told her guest bedroom everything was packed up. Her eyes went wide, asked if I'd packed her things. I said all of it, made it easy for her. She laughed, but it came out bitter. Said how considerate of me. I just looked at her. She walked down the hall toward the guest room. I heard her open the door and heard the sharp intake of breath when she saw all the boxes. Neat, labeled, stacked. 2 weeks of her life reduced to 6 cardboard boxes. She came back and now anger was replacing the shock. Said I had no right to touch her things. I said they were her things and she'd want them when she left. She asked when she left. Said this was her house, too. I told her no, actually it wasn't. Her face flushed red. She said we were married and lived here together. I explained the house was in my name only, bought and paid for before we got married. She never contributed to the mortgage, never paid for repairs or property taxes. She just lived here. She said that's not how marriage works. I said it's exactly how the law works and my attorney already confirmed it. She was breathing hard now, fists clenched at her sides. Asked if I was kicking her out just like that. I said she had until tomorrow morning to figure out where she was going. After that, the locks get changed. She said I couldn't do that. I said I could and I would. She grabbed her phone from her pocket, hands fumbling with it. Said she was calling her mother. I told her to go ahead. She turned away with the phone to her ear. I heard her voice shaky and high-pitched. Asked her mom to please come over. Said she needed her. While she talked, I walked back to the living room and sat down, picked up my laptop, started answering emails like nothing unusual was happening. She finished her call and came back in tears now. The anger was giving way to panic. Said her mom was on her way, and I was going to explain to her why I was doing this. I said I was happy to explain. She said her mother was going to think I'd lost my mind. I said maybe she would. She paced back and forth, wiping at her eyes. Said she couldn't believe this. She went on one trip, and I decided our entire marriage was over. I said it wasn't one trip, it was 6 months of her checking out. 6 months of late nights and cold shoulders and texting someone else instead of talking to me. The trip was just the final confirmation. She said she wasn't cheating. I said she was emotionally checked out of this marriage and physically spending all her time with another man. Call it whatever made her feel better. She stopped pacing and asked, so that's it? No counseling, no trying to fix things. I asked if she wanted to fix things or if she wanted me to accept being second place in my own marriage while she did whatever she wanted. I wasn't doing that. She said she never said I was second place. I told her she didn't have to say it. A car pulled up outside. Her mother, Lorraine, had never particularly liked me. Thought her daughter married beneath her station. She'd made that abundantly clear over the years with little comments about my job, my house, my clothes. The doorbell rang. Rebecca went to answer it, and I heard Lorraine's voice immediately asking what was wrong, saying Rebecca sounded hysterical on the phone. They came into the living room together. Lorraine looked at me like I was something unpleasant stuck to her shoe, demanded to know what I'd done. I stood up calmly and said I filed for divorce while Rebecca was on her trip. Lorraine asked what kind of man does something like that. I said the kind whose wife told him to get divorced if he didn't like her going on vacation with another man. So I took her advice. Lorraine's eyes narrowed dangerously, said Rebecca went on a work trip with colleagues. I said she went to a beach resort with a man she'd been inappropriately close to for months, and when I objected to it, she told me to divorce her. So I did exactly that. Rebecca was crying harder now, clinging to her mother's arm. Said I was kicking her out, had packed all her things, wouldn't even listen to her. Lorraine's face went red. Said this was Rebecca's home, and I couldn't just throw her out. I said the house was in my name. She wasn't on the deed or the mortgage. Legally, I could ask her to leave any time. Lorraine said that was ridiculous. We were married. I said not for much longer. She looked like she wanted to hit me, but instead turned to Rebecca and told her to get her things. They were leaving. Rebecca said she wasn't leaving. This was her house. I said quietly that it wasn't, and if she wasn't gone by tomorrow morning, I'd have the police remove her. She looked at me like I'd physically slapped her. Said I wouldn't do that. I told her to try me. Lorraine grabbed Rebecca's arm and said, "Come on, let me be alone with my papers and my pride, and we'll see how that works out." They went to the guest room. I heard them moving boxes and talking in low, angry voices. 20 minutes later, they were loading her car with the first batch. Rebecca came back in one more time. Her eyes were red, mascara smeared down her cheeks. Said she hoped I knew I was making the biggest mistake of my life. I said I didn't think so. She said I was going to regret this. I said probably not. She just stared at me, then turned and walked out, slamming the door behind her. I watched through the window as they finished loading everything, watched Lorraine put an arm around her shoulders, watched them drive away. Then I picked up my phone and called the locksmith, asked how soon he could come by. He said he could be there in an hour. I said, perfect. The locksmith finished around 7 that evening. New locks, new keys. I tested them twice to make absolutely sure everything worked properly. After he left, I ordered dinner and sat down with a beer. The house felt different, lighter somehow, like a weight I'd been carrying for months had finally been lifted off my shoulders. My phone started buzzing around 8, her calling. I let it go to voicemail. It buzzed again 2 minutes later, again. On the 5th call, I answered and asked what she wanted. She said we needed to talk. Her voice was calmer now, more controlled. She'd probably spent the last few hours strategizing with Lorraine. I said no, we didn't need to talk. She asked me to please hear her out, said there had been a huge misunderstanding. I said there hadn't been any misunderstanding. She asked if she could come over just to talk face to face. I said no. She asked why I was being so stubborn about this. I almost laughed. Asked if stubborn was what she was going with. She said she made a mistake, that she shouldn't have said what she said before she left. She was angry and spoke without thinking. I said she wasn't angry, she was cold and calculated. She meant every word. She insisted that wasn't true. Said she loved me and didn't want this marriage to end. I said funny how she suddenly loved me now that there were actual consequences, and she was quiet for a moment. Asked what I wanted from her. An apology. Said fine, she was sorry. Sorry she went on the trip, sorry she said those things. Could we please just talk about this like adults? I said we were talking. I was telling her the divorce was happening and she was upset about it. There was nothing else to discuss. She said I was really going to throw away 7 years over one fight. I said it wasn't one fight. It was 6 months of her prioritizing another man over her husband. The fight was just the breaking point. She insisted nothing happened with Trevor. I said I didn't care anymore. That seemed to hit her hard. Her voice got smaller. Asked if I really didn't care. I said no. Whatever did or didn't happen doesn't matter anymore. She checked out of this marriage months ago. I was just finalizing what she'd already decided. She said that wasn't fair. I said life wasn't fair and she'd get over it. I hung up. She called back immediately. I declined it. She called again. I turned off my phone completely. Next morning, I had 17 missed calls and 12 text messages. I scrolled through them while making coffee. Most were variations of, please talk to me. We can fix this. I miss you. Don't do this. One stood out, though, sent at 2 in the morning. Said I was going to regret pushing her away and that she had rights, too. There was the anger underneath all the pleading. The entitlement that made her think she could do whatever she wanted and I'd just accept it forever. I deleted all the messages and blocked her number. Monday morning, I was back at work. Jordan stopped by my desk around 10. Said I looked good, better than I had in months, actually. I said I felt good. He pulled up a chair and lowered his voice. Said, okay, what happened, and don't tell him nothing. I glanced around to make sure nobody was listening. Told him I filed for divorce. His eyes widened. Asked when. I said last week she got served Friday when she came back from her trip. He stopped himself from swearing. Asked how she took it. I said about as well as he'd expect. Lots of crying, lots of anger, then lots of texts telling me I was making a mistake. He asked if I was making a mistake. I said not even a little bit. He nodded slowly and said good for me, seriously. He'd watched me put up with her attitude for way too long. I said, yeah, well, not anymore. That afternoon, Pierce called me. Said Rebecca's attorney had reached out. She'd gotten an attorney named Sharon Oliver. Wanted to discuss settlement terms. I asked what there was to settle. The house was mine, the cars were separate. We split the joint checking account, and that was it. Pierce said that's what he told her, but she pushed back about the house. Said Rebecca deserved compensation for 7 years of marriage. I asked compensation for what exactly? Living rent-free. Pierce said that was essentially his argument. Said she was going to try to drag this out and make it difficult, but we had a very strong position. The house was mine before marriage, no kids involved, separate incomes. This should be straightforward. I said good. Pierce mentioned one thing, though. She was claiming emotional distress. Said I blindsided her and caused her psychological damage by filing while she was on vacation. I actually laughed at that. Told him she told me to get divorced. I did exactly what she suggested. He asked if I had that in writing anywhere, text or email. I said no, it was verbal, but I was sure if we asked her directly, she'd admit she said it. He said we'd see. For now, stay the course. Don't engage with her at all. All communication goes through him. I said I already blocked her number. He said perfect. The week passed quietly. No calls, no surprise visits. Either she'd given up or her attorney told her to back off. I hoped it was the latter. Friday evening, I was at the grocery store when I ran into Natalie. the coworker who'd supposedly been on the trip with them. She saw me and her face went red immediately. Started pushing her cart in the other direction fast. I called out to her. She stopped reluctantly and turned around. I said, "Hey, quick question. Was she on that beach trip with Rebecca and Trevor?" She shifted uncomfortably and said she didn't think she should talk about that. I said, "That's a no then." She looked down at her cart, said she was invited but couldn't go, had family obligations. So it was just the two of them. She said, and a few other people, she thought. I asked if she thought or if she knew. She finally met my eyes, said, look, she was sorry. She told Rebecca it was a bad idea, but she didn't listen. I said she rarely does. Natalie nodded. Said for what it's worth, she thought I was doing the right thing. Rebecca had been different lately and not in a good way. I thanked her for the honesty. She pushed her cart past me, then stopped. Said there was something else I should know. I waited. She said Rebecca and Trevor weren't together anymore. Apparently, he broke it off a few days ago. Said it wasn't what he thought it would be. I absorbed that information, asked if he was just in it for the thrill. Natalie said seems like it. And now Rebecca has nothing. She looked genuinely sympathetic and said she tried to warn her, but Rebecca doesn't listen. After she left, I finished my shopping and headed home. The information about Trevor didn't change anything for me. Didn't make me feel vindicated or satisfied. Just confirmed what I already knew. She'd gambled everything on something that wasn't real or solid, and now she was paying the price for it. Later that night, I got an email from an address I didn't recognize. Subject line said, "Please read." I almost deleted it, but curiosity got me. It was from Rebecca. A long, rambling message about how sorry she was, how she'd made terrible choices, how she understood why I was angry, but couldn't I please give her one more chance? She talked about the good times we'd had, the early years when things were easy, the plans we'd made for the future, but noticeably she didn't mention Trevor anywhere. Didn't address the affair or what had actually happened. Didn't take accountability for any of the specific things she'd done. Just vague apologies and desperate pleas. I read it twice, then forwarded it to Pierce with a note saying I wasn't changing my mind. He responded within minutes saying, "Good, stay strong. This is classic manipulation testing to see if I'll crack." I wouldn't crack. 3 weeks later, Pierce called with an update, said Rebecca signed the papers. I asked what she actually signed. He said her attorney convinced her she wasn't going to get anything more than what we offered. It was done. I was officially divorced pending the final court date. I sat down processing that information, said it was fast. He said she didn't have much leverage. Once her attorney explained the actual situation, she realized fighting would just cost her money with no benefit. Court date was in 4 weeks, but it was just a formality at this point. Everything was settled. After I hung up, I sat there for a while, just thinking. Divorced, after 7 years of marriage? It should have felt sad or final or something heavy. Instead, it just felt like closing a chapter that should have closed months ago. I picked up my phone and called Jordan. Asked if he was free tonight. He said, "Yeah, what's up?" I told him divorce was finalized and asked if he wanted to grab dinner. He said absolutely, and we made plans. The court date came and went without drama. 10 minutes in front of a judge, signatures on paper, and it was officially over. I walked out of the courthouse, feeling lighter than I had in years. Jordan was waiting by his car in the parking lot, asked how it felt. I said like I should have done this 6 months ago. We grabbed lunch at a diner downtown. He asked about my plans, whether I was going to sell the house or move somewhere new. I said no point, I liked the house, and it was mine, why would I leave? He said fair enough. A couple months passed, and I settled into a routine that actually felt good and healthy. Work, gym, time with friends I'd been neglecting, simple things that had somehow become complicated when she was around. One Saturday, I was at the hardware store picking up supplies when I saw her across the parking lot. She looked tired and thinner than before. She saw me at the same time and quickly looked away, hurrying to her car. I didn't feel anything at all. No anger, no satisfaction, no vindication, just nothing. That's when I knew I'd completely moved on. Later that week, Jordan mentioned he'd heard through mutual friends that Rebecca had tried getting back together with Trevor. He'd turned her down flat. Apparently, he had a girlfriend now, someone who wasn't married. Jordan asked if that bothered me at all. I said not even slightly, and I meant it. She'd made her choices, prioritized excitement over stability, burned down her marriage for something that was never going to last. Now she was dealing with the aftermath of those choices. That wasn't my problem anymore. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I went on a date. Nothing serious or heavy, just coffee with someone I'd met through work. It went well. We laughed, talked easily about various things, made plans to meet again the following weekend. As I drove home that night, I realized something important. I was happy, genuinely happy with my life. Not pretending, not settling, not making excuses for anything, just authentically happy. Rebecca had told me to get a divorce if I didn't like her choices. Turned out to be the best advice she ever gave me.